right, thank you all for being here today. We're going to be getting started in just a couple minutes as everyone kind of starts trickling in to join us. One of the things I'd like to mention is for the best viewing experience, if you go on the top, you can click gallery view or speaker view. Gallery view tends to work well here. And I'll go ahead and post that in the chat. Looks like we still have some people coming in. Paul, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you, James?
I'm great. I'm doing real well. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
It's always fun getting started on these, right? Like you put in the practice, you know, you've gone through some dry runs, and then it's finally game day, right?
So, you practiced? That's fantastic.
I may have practiced once or twice.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, this is good, and it's a fun topic, very timely. So thanks for the opportunity.
Very timely. It's interesting because I think we both wanted to do this topic at some point, regardless, and obviously given the situation, it just is more top of mind than ever.
Yeah, it is.
I still see people rolling in, which is fine. We'll get started in probably a minute or so. For those who just joined us, welcome. For the best viewing experience, you can change your view to gallery view. Typically works best. And get familiar with the tools. Virtual best practices. This will be interactive. So find the chat, find the poll.
Get your mouses and keyboards ready, folks.
Get it ready. All right, Paul, what do you say? Why don't we get started? And it looks like there's still some people joining us. They'll continue to trickle in over the hour. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, PreSales community. Third installment of the PreSales Collective webinar. I'm James Kakis, currently a solutions engineering leader at Salesforce, and I'm honored to be your host today. For those that are joining us for the first time, hello, thank you. For the repeat joiners, it's nice to see you again, and thank you for your continual support. We definitely appreciate your attendance and your commitment to growing our community. I actually want to start a little bit different today. I want to take a moment to talk about the PreSales Collective content and webinar strategy before we get into our main presentation today. You know, I think from the global pandemic has flipped our world upside down. You know, we were planning on launching the PreSales Collective in summer, but with this whole situation, we felt we needed this to satisfy the sense of community a little bit earlier, right? And that being said, we've really focused on our content strategy and making sure it is high value learnings at all times through articles, discussions, newsletter, webinars. If you were on the first two webinars, we had Chris White and the 6 Habits of Highly Effective SEs, Rob Falcone with product-led sales, and this week we're going to be focusing on virtual best practices. If you haven't seen any of the webinars prior, they are on the site under past webinars. But one of the things I really wanted to stress and highlight is that we are fully committed to continue the trend of value-driven topics, value-driven thought leaders. We are 100% committed to making sure that these webinars and all of our content are extremely planned and executed well, they're impactful, and they're valuable. We know that there's a lot of content out there, there's a lot of webinars. We want to make sure that this is extremely valuable, going to help you be the best version of yourself, and it does mean a lot to us that you're spending your time here today. So moving on to the next slide, what I do want to highlight is typically the last two sessions have walked through an agenda, but I actually want to change that. I want to actually walk through, from attending virtual best practices, what are you going to learn and understand and be able to walk away with today? And that is how to increase engagement, how to increase retention of your key messages, differentiating your solution, and identifying key indicators to a successful presentation and successful demo, and a demo checklist to ensure success. That's what we want to make sure that you understand walking in today. This is going to be our guide. And that is what we're going to be talking about over the next 55 minutes. Before I get into that, for those that are here for the first time, I do want to highlight the PreSales Collective mission on the next slide, Paul, is that we are relentlessly focused on growing and developing pre-sales profession around the world. The collective was inspired to be a source of resource knowledge, best practice sharing, and everything that the community wants us to be. And we'll continue to push that message. We'll continue to drive home that there needs to be a central place for people in our profession to come together and work together and learn and grow. And that's what we're here to do. If you want more information, it is on the About section of the website, but just wanted to briefly highlight that for those who haven't heard it yet. So getting into this today, I would like to start by launching a poll. So for those unfamiliar with Zoom, there's going to be a dialog box that pops up and asks you to best describe your role. Best describe it if you can. And I do know that from the RSVP, we might have some more AEs and sales leaders here today than usual. While those are coming in, demo best practices, right? Presentation best practices. One of those things are 3 impactful questions you should start every meeting with. And I want you to get familiar with the chat feature right now. The chat is only to myself and Paul, but I want to know, what is your name, what is your title, and what is one objective that you would like to get out of today? So if you can go to the chat and fill out those 3 questions, we would appreciate it. While people are still filling out the poll results, I want to go ahead and introduce Paul to the crowd. So Paul, how you doing today? Doing well?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you.
All right. For those who don't know our guest presenter today, Paul Pearce. I've met a number of people that have attended Paul's great demo training and sessions and have talked about how massively influential and impactful those sessions were. That's actually how we got to know each other, as I've been hearing about Paul through my network and reached out. And really, when we wanted to launch this webinar series and the PreSales Collective, we wanted someone like Paul to come in and share his insights from over 20 years of experience in sales and pre-sales. He's been a great demo practitioner since the inception in 2004, and he's also helped build and lead 2 international pre-sales organizations. Right now, he is the senior director at GP Strategies, where he's leading HCM software and implementation sales, and is also, again, certified great demo training partner. Why we wanted to bring someone like Paul onto the webinar is Paul has trained over 1,000 people in his career, and I'm probably underestimating that number. He's been a part of thousands of presentations, thousands of demos, and we thought it would be great to bring those to life with the PreSales Collective, and even more timely with the given situation that we're in today. So that said, Paul is going to be going through some insights on virtual presentation best practices, sharing his concepts, sharing his learnings, and how to differentiate your values. So Paul, welcome.
Hey, thank you, James. I appreciate it. I appreciate that warm introduction as well. I'm honored. Thank you. I appreciate it. I think we got some great material to share with folks today. Hopefully we'll leave here with many of those items that you talked about, but our goal is to make this as engaging and interactive as we can for you guys. So we should probably jump in and get things started from remote demo and presentation best practices. How's that sound?
Sounds great to me. I'm ready. And I appreciate all the chat responses that are coming in. We got some good information here.
Yeah. Did you get that answer or the question answered effectively? Those 3 questions?
I would say our panelists, or excuse me, our attendees are doing a really good job answering that question. Setting expectations very clearly.
That sounds good. We kind of changed the theme from a focus of demos today as well, and really include this to almost all the concepts, 90% of the concepts that really apply to presentations online, whether it's PowerPoint and it's the initial part of your sales stage, to anything that's a demonstration as well. So I think there's some awesome practices that we'll talk about that we can take into many facets of our careers and lives. And it'll be fun to see how many sales folks and leaders that we've got on the call today as well. Hey, with that in mind, I would like to ask a quick question and do a quick Minty poll myself. which means you guys will need to get in front of a web browser or your cell phone. And I'm going to give you a code in just a moment, and you guys can answer one really simple question for me. Here it comes. Right there. If you go to minty.com and use the code 672277, you can stay right there, answer a question. And I see someone's already hit it. Thank you. I've got 2 Minty questions for you. So if you leave your browser open when this is done, you won't have to relaunch that code, I don't believe. But that's the code for you guys. And essentially the question is driving a little bit of the content that we have. So we're interested in how many folks have had it and how many of the concepts that we may want to share as we go through. And then of course we may know who to pick on as well, right? When we go through a few of these. We'll give it about 30 seconds here and we'll see how many folks have gone through and hit that. This is also the engagement indicator. So we want to make sure that you're engaged, that we've got your attention, and that you're interactive as part of this presentation as well to drive some of the best practices, hopefully, that we're going to share with you throughout the rest of our time. So there we go. It's growing. It is growing. I think I would, well, go ahead, James.
I'll say we're definitely getting some answers. And you know what I really like about this Minty is how it's being used in typical sales conversations today. I've seen people from my team. I've even been on calls where people are using these in regular demos. It changes the game in interaction.
It really does. This is good. I think if I rewrote this question, I'd probably say, who's either attended a great demo, workshop, or read the book? Because I think it's on the must-read list for anyone within the career field, the Great Demo book. This is really good.
Perfect.
All right, sounds good. I'm going to continue to move on. We'll leave that poll open in the background as people continue to engage and interact. We'll have another one for you momentarily, but we'll get started with remote demo presentations and best practices. Hey, but James, I wanted to make sure I had a chance just to kind of share with folks the conversation you and I had as well when we were thinking about, you know, the COVID situation and some of the opportunities that we're seeing in the market, because the way that we're going and we're doing software demos is a little bit different. We've been doing them remotely for a long time, but it probably more pervasively today than we have in the past. And it really provides this unique opportunity of maximizing the effectiveness of our interactions with clients, and making sure that we're doing all we can to sell effectively, but with that time that we're spending with clients, making sure that it's very proactive and that we're doing some wonderful things. And of course, we know the challenge, as we discussed, was no travel. We're all quarantined. We're sitting at our houses. It's been fun. It's been fun to see. But there's an absolute restriction or lack of face-to-face interaction. So James and I are on camera today, but I will tell you, I've probably been on 50 calls and video calls where no one wants to turn on their camera. And it certainly is a little bit more challenging to communicate with folks. See, like James, I can see you shake your head and you got the yes going. All right, that's good. Well, specifically, you know, we need to solve clients' problems. And in this role of sales and demos, we need to make sure that we're selling effectively, but more importantly, increasing the retention of our solutions and making sure the things that we do share with clients, when they may often forget, help us get the key information to them, those memorable points that we want them to take back in their decision-making criteria. And when we do it right, we can reduce time to sale, we get to differentiate our companies, we get to build rapport and personalize our experience with clients, and that's a ton of fun. Right? So of course the value, if we do this well, folks remember the brilliance we're going to share with them. We get to increase engagement, but more importantly, sell more services and software, right? Good thing? All right. Of course, we're going to do it all the time. And well, let me ask you a question, James. Do you think that effectively kind of wraps up what you and I had talked about maybe, you know, 3 or 4 weeks ago when we were just first kind of thinking about this particular series?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking me this. I think it absolutely does. And, you know, the biggest thing is the status quo is no longer an option, Paul.
Oh, beautifully said. That's right. The way we've performed and demonstrated and interacted with our clients is different, right? And we're going to talk about some of those techniques as we go through. How does that sound? So let's look at the agenda real quick. We're going to introduce some things. We're going to talk about the challenge that we see today. You've seen that. And then we're going to talk about perhaps what things should look like and what we want them to look like, as opposed to what sometimes we're classically trained to discuss. We'll then go in and talk about some of those particular challenges that we face, and you'll see some of those items right here. If I look at this right here, pardon me. If I capture this one right here, an interesting point, and I'm saying right now we're going to talk about this, they're never going to remember anyway, right? Which is part of the challenge, of course. We'll then come in and we're going to look at why demonstrations fail or presentations fail and challenge. That's going to be our next Minty Poll for you guys. So I'll be looking for some feedback from you. And then you get to my personal list of top indicators that your demonstration or presentation isn't going very well. And you may see some of those and shake your head and agree. But definitely a checklist that we'll provide to you after this webinar, perhaps in the discussion, of things to consider. Might be another good blog post for us, James. And then we're going to go right back and look at best practices. We'll actually go through here and we'll look at driving back to basics. And a phrase that I picked up from my wife during a heated discussion one time, she said, "You better check yourself before you wreck yourself." It was so funny, right? The heated conversation was over. But I think that applies to what we're doing here, getting your checklist and getting back to basics and making sure that beyond the basics, we're driving attention and retention and our key messages very effectively when we go through. How does that sound? Sound like a good agenda?
Sounds like a perfect agenda.
I love it. Well, that's good. All right, let's do it then. Let's jump forward one more. And so I want to talk about something that's really kind of the challenge, if you will, when we think about web demonstrations. And so, James, let me ask you this, or perhaps in your chat dialog box, tell me what folks are saying out here. What would you say is the number one challenge to doing remote presentations and demonstrations?
That's a tough question, loaded question. But I think it's just understanding the engagement, right?
Yeah.
And we're getting a lot of people saying audience engagement, not seeing audience reactions, audience attention.
Brilliant. Well done, guys. That is it exactly. And this picture on the screen is really illustrating, right in here, that we don't get to see this person's face. And much like when people don't have their cameras or they're looking away, there's a challenge. And it gets worse because not only can we not see their face and gauge their reaction and really understand what's going on, there's something else at work in a remote demonstration that we don't always see in a face-to-face. And so I'm going to give a quick shout out to my friend Julie Hansen from Performance Sales and Training, or Sales and Training. She put out an awesome blog post last week. If you guys look her up and check it out, actually I'll put the URL in our discussion afterwards. But she had reported from one of the world's largest conference call companies some interesting statistics. She said, for a matter of fact, that people are typically engaged in other things while they're looking at remote presentations and demonstrations. You don't need to put this in your chat discussion group or threaded discussion here, but how many people are eating lunch? We designed the series to be at a time, but distractions are prevalent. I would, well, here's the statistics, right? 65% of people on your remote demonstration or presentation are doing other work, checking their emails, doing other things as they go through. They may be eating or making food, and about 55% of people are doing that on our webinars and remote demonstrations, and sometimes you hear them. And then 21% of people are doing online shopping. So I was thinking, James, we need a new KPI or heuristic for effective demonstrations, and that is essentially the amount of revenue you produce on Amazon.com during your demonstration. And I'm sure I'm up to the $1 million mark on mine, right?
I might be there too.
But that's the reality.
Yes.
You can't see what's going on. You get that interaction as easily, and people are always doing something else, or very often doing something else, especially about 65% of the time. Let me ask you a question here. You guys can type this in your chat dialog box as well. James, I'm going to put you on the hot seat. Who is this? You recognize this face?
I do recognize this face, and that is Ray Charles. And I see some of the answers. Tim, Ellie, Danny, Ray Charles, that is accurate. That is Ray Charles.
Okay, so this is what I usually get when I show this screen in training. Someone says Jamie Foxx. It's not. Did you get that in any of the chat dialog boxes?
Somebody did post Jamie Foxx.
Oh,
I don't know if they were prepared for that one, but somebody did put Jamie Foxx in there.
Yeah, there you go. Interesting. So, of course, one of the most unique characteristics about Ray Charles is what?
He's blind.
Yeah, he was blind. And it's kind of interesting. So Ray Charles is, if anyone's gone to one of his concerts or seen, they've always reported that there was something really unique about Ray. And they felt that when he was playing for them, he was playing specifically for them. They left feeling this personal connection to him, highly motivated and enthralled with his performance. But he did it in a way, and he was able to connect with people in a very, very deep and meaningful way through his performances, which kind of raises that opportunity for us. If Ray Charles can do that and have people raving about his performance and his relationship when he had no opportunity to see them, might we be able to do that as well in our demonstrations with folks? And so the opportunity here is to think kind of like Ray Charles, if we will. And I'll tell you, I've been with Great Demo for quite some time. I've been a practitioner since 2004. And what I loved about the methodology was it gave us kind of an opportunity to master engagement immediately. And we do that essentially from this right here. If you guys will, in your chat dialog box, type this with me, which is do the last thing first, right? And it's bringing that most important element right to the front of your conversation and your demonstration. So hopefully, much like James, they're shaking their head, they're leaning into their camera or they're leaning into their seats, and they're asking all kinds of questions like, how did you do that? And how did you get there? We want to make sure that we reverse the traditional demo approach, right, of building and building and waiting for that aha moment in hopes that it comes, and instead of starting with it and revealing the additional information and complexity, but in accord with our customers' depth and level of interest. And that's one of the neat ways. So I'm going to fast forward and give you guys that one right up front, but there's a different way to do it, right? And ultimately, we want to maximize the retention of the benefits of our solutions and do it as easily as possible. So think about this for a moment. Look at this picture right here. So James, when you look at this and we're thinking about software demonstrations, let me ask, what do you think? Who is this person right here? Who does this lady represent? Or who?
This represents our customers and our prospects.
That's right. And somewhere over here, it's you or me pounding on the keyboard, right? And essentially, isn't this kind of the way that we do traditional demonstrations, right? It's this fire hose blast of information. It's just furiously flung features and functions in the face of our clients. And we're just like, wham, our product is so awesome. You have to see it all. It is absolutely cool. And that's what we do. So let me clear that real quick, because I think there's a different perspective in what we want to suggest here, right? And instead of that fire hose, that unidirectional fire hose delivery of information, consider this: a conversation right up here at the very top. I'll hit my radar so you can see that. But folks, we actually want to have a bi-directional conversation with our clients, allowing them, based upon their intrigue, to ask questions, which drives so much more. And this is exactly what good looks like. And when your folks are engaged, when that champion's sitting at the front of the room and he's leaning forward, or on the webinar when he's shaking his head and he's got it, it's brilliant, because you know you have their engagement and their interest, and more importantly, everyone that watches them is noticing it as well, right? So we're going to suggest that you start with a conversation.
And Paul, actually, I was thinking about something. You don't know that I'm going to say this, right? I was thinking about this from yesterday when I saw this slide. And I was thinking, in your day-to-day, whether it's a partner, a family member, a friend, if they sat there and pulled you aside and talked to you for 45 to 60 minutes straight, do you think you would actually listen to what they had to say? And I was thinking about that the other day, and I feel like that's so much of what happens in real life in sales. And you just wonder, like, you wouldn't do that in your personal life. You would call that a lecture. So like, why do we treat sales demos or sales presentations the same way?
Brilliant. You're absolutely right. And I think we all know people that just drone on and on and on. And sometimes you fade out of the conversation and come back and they're still talking, right? Or you set the phone down and walk away. Yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly it. So I appreciate that insight. So you're right. We want to have a conversation, right? We want, and the opportunity there is discovery and so many other things. But essentially, guys, this is what a conversation and a great presentation and demo is going to look like on the other end remotely when we go through. All right, but this is the bad news. I'm sorry to share it. When you look at retention rates of anything, right? This is actually some statistics from the National Training Center's average learning retention rates. When you look at this information, we've got a problem because it doesn't take too long and people are really starting to forget some things. So if we look at the typical presentation without a demo, right? We end up here at the 20% mark. But when you take it over to this area, let me circle that whole thing, a demonstration, we'll track that right over. And where are we at, James? An unfortunate 30%.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Right? Not good. So we can increase that by doing some practice or discussion, et cetera. But overall retention rates from the things that we're doing is absolutely poor. And this is from the average learning retention rates when people are in classrooms. Think about the distractions and the challenges that we have when we're doing it virtually. So if we take this one step further, right, there's some information and it is quite alarming. For example, they're not going to remember it. And here's why. Because according to Instructure.com, about 10 learning stats, after 1 hour, check that out, people retain less than 50%. Less than 50% after 1 hour. And then if we go through and we go to the next one and think about this further, after 1 day, they're right here at the 50%, or pardon me, after 1 day, people forget more than 70%. And then after 6 days, now this is scary, 6 days after your presentation and demo, they've forgotten 75% of what you said, right? But there's hope. So check this out. Matt Brigham from Instructure.com says, forgetting isn't just the learner's fault. The presentation of information can either hinder or spur memory. Let me highlight that for you guys real quick. I'm going to underline that. The presentation of information can either hinder or spur memory, right? And I think that's very important because of the way we organize our content, how we present it is going to help ensure that they're retaining the key information components of our message, right? They won't think about the 500th mouth click that you've done. They will remember that. If there's a drop-down list box, I'm sure they're not going to remember that, right? But when you're talking about the value your solution provides to folks and the critical specific capabilities and critical capabilities they need, that will capture their attention. And so we'll talk about that as we go through. I've got a question for you guys. I tell you what, let's stop right here for just a minute. I'm going to do that. I'm going to go right over to another screen. I have a question for you guys. Maybe. Here we go. Let me clear a few things. I'm going to ask you guys another Minty question. So answer this one for me, if you will. If you're on your Minty.com, we had over 80 responses on the last question. So let's see if we can get even more here, right? How have you seen virtual demonstrations and presentations gone wrong? Now, when you jump into Minty.com, this is going to allow you to use, it's a word cloud. So think about 1 or 2 words. You can respond up to 3 times here. Like, What's gone wrong for you when you've done some virtual presentations? Misalignment? Silence? Okay, here they come. This is great. Too much talking.
This is my favorite thing about Minty, just how this all comes in. I mean,
Yeah, this is cool.
Content here.
Bad Wi-Fi, technical issues. I saw throw up in there. Oh, show up and throw up. Yes.
Yep.
What are those standard, the diatribe demo or the harbor tour? I love it. Okay, you guys are awesome. It's coming in.
Silence still saying number one. Technical issues, maybe a close second, but misalignment. How many times have you had that experience, Paul?
Yeah, those top three, here we go. We're rating them by the size of the words. This is brilliant, guys. Thank you for this feedback. This is wonderful. And I'm actually quite amused that silence is the number one answer so far. All right, you guys can continue to go ahead and put some information in there. We've got 80 responses, right? We're about ready to break the record. Someone's going to be the winner that breaks it for us. Well, I'll go ahead and jump off of Minty. We'll continue to put your results in there. We can always come back to this or share it in our discussion afterwards as well.
Definitely.
Because the next part, I want you guys to remember some of these things very importantly. It's going to be right here, top indicators that your demo is going poorly. James, what do you think? What's number one?
My guess is that it's the talking at you. It's just straight long talk.
Very good. You got it. And maybe that's the silence people are talking about. It's not the silence of the person who's doing the demo. It's right here. Your demo is a monologue, and it can be bad, right? So if folks, you need to go check out this article. It's by Gong. It's called The 7 Elements of Insanely Persuasive Sales Product Demos. And it is brilliantly analyzed. Matter of fact, so Gong, real quick as a background, they record sales conversations for best practices. I'm probably not doing them justice here with my off-the-cuff description, but absolutely brilliant at driving performance in sales conversations. So they record those, and they recorded and analyzed over 3 million demonstrations. So they use artificial intelligence. They break the conversation into tracks. They analyze the words that are spoken, the time frames, but they came out with some insanely cool statistics. Fortunately, ones that have kind of validated the great demo methodology. Congratulations, Peter Cohan, the author of the great demo. He has presented some things here, but first of all, your demo should not be a monologue. It should be a conversation. They reported that you should need to think about the 9-minute rule. And the 9-minute rule means you should be able to present your solution or a component of your solution in 9 minutes or less. And that's kind of that. And then the demos that went over, or perhaps the winning demos or those persuasive demonstrations did 39% less time demoing, right? They let your buyers ask questions and guide your path, right? And James, I know there's some folks on your team that love that concept when they demo. All right, so number 10, it's almost like the David Letterman top 10 list, isn't it?
It is. That's exactly what I was thinking it is. It almost like needed like sound going into it.
So I already hit number 9. Number 8, you're showing all the neat stuff. So clear indication that you don't know the specific capabilities that your client needs, right? And you're going to go through and show the cool stuff, your competitive differentiators, the things that product management and marketing said you should be showing, which may be the truth in a generic type of informational type of demo, but in a great demo, when you're gauging your audience, let's not do that. We want to avoid the neat stuff and talk about specific capabilities. Number 7, I love this one because I was the guy who did a lot of these early in my career. It's the standard demo. So here's the kiss of death to you sales folks. And if you're a pre-sales individual and you hear this from the salesperson, right? Just give your standard demo. Just do what you do every time. It was awesome. Do what you did last time, right? indication number 7, I'd almost put that clear up at number 1, that it's not gonna be a great demonstration, right? So think about that when you're jumping, you're on your 8th or 9th demonstration, it's the same one. Man, I had a guy I used to work with, Al Cazzoni, loved him. I remember one time, and this was the first time I realized I was doing this. He said, do you mind changing your stories a little bit? They're fantastic. I'm just personally very tired of hearing them, right? It's that standard demo. So don't do them. Make sure you understand the specific capabilities your clients need and the value you provide them so you can give it to them right up front. So James, you ask a question at the beginning. Maybe people can top it again in their chat dialog box. Those 3 questions that we ask at the beginning of every call, or should be asking.
Right.
Anyone in their chat dialog box ready to repeat the 3 questions really quick? See who wins this one, James. I hope you call them out and say congrats.
Hey. It looks like Ellie. Ellie is the winner. Ellie doesn't have a last name. Chris, close second, and Stephanie as well.
Nice. What were the 3 responses then, or the 3 answers, the 3 things we need to know?
Name, role, and objective.
That's it. Yep. We ask at the beginning of this. Now you guys type it in. You didn't know who was on your call. And in a virtual demonstration, you may hear the ding in your ear or something pops up on the screen. It's okay. Ask them those 3 questions. Find out who's there. They may be a significant influencer. If you have an opportunity to pinpoint something for them rapidly, that's an absolute win. So if you don't know who's on your call, you don't know, you're on a monologue and you're giving the same thing over and over and all, your demo is going poorly. It may not be a great demo, I should say, right? Summarization, very important. How many people have hit number 4 right here? And I'll go ahead and put them out there. I love this one right here.
That is like one of my biggest pet peeves, right? You're on a call and you know that there's like something you're going to have to show, but you waited to the end to show it. And then there's like 6 minutes left in your meeting and you have 7 minutes of demo content left and you're just trying to fly by. It just doesn't work. It doesn't go well.
And with that, we got to make sure this one's a winner. So let's keep it rolling. And I tell you what, I'm going to focus on number 1 because you guys nailed it. Number 1, 0 interaction from your clients. The silence. It's like you say, hey folks, any questions? And this is what you hit right here, crickets. Crickets on the end of the line. And you go, huh, must be doing a good job. I answered all their questions. Yeah, there you go. 10 top indicators that your demo is going poorly. Let's go ahead and jump on as we go through. So what we've done so far is we've talked about, kind of setting things up and what the challenges are. You can't see people. You can't hear them. You don't have the visual reference. They're highly distracted. And then we're doing things like, for example, just going into our demonstrations and doing the same thing over and over and over again. So we've kind of understand where that's at. Now I want to take us back to a few basics before we talk about some other skills that are going to be required. And in this section right here, we're going to jump into back to basics, surprisingly interesting components. I want to start right here. Any idea who we're looking at, James?
Pilots.
That is right. And what are they holding right here?
They got a checklist.
They got a checklist, right? So anyone ever wondered or ever thought about like pilots? And it's so unique because they've got these folks who are highly trained, of course, but they jump out of plane, they get in the cockpit, and within maybe 45 minutes of getting on that plane, never have seen or recognized many of these folks that they've never flown with before. How do they make sure that they're operationally sufficient, that the plane is safe, and more importantly, you're safe? They do it through checklists. So hundreds of flights, the same type of aircraft, and thousands of hours experience. That's usually when challenges happen, and to make sure they don't forget or miss anything, we start with checklists, right? So let's think about that for just a moment here and talk about checklists for you before the demo. So the first one I think is very important. So James, how early did we start and kick things off for our session today?
Well, we got on 15 minutes ahead of time. You got on an hour and 15 minutes ahead of time. I'm throwing you under the bus today.
Yeah, I did. I was so excited. And it's been a career challenge to me ever since day one, time zone calculations. So yeah, you got it. Right, and why do we want to do that?
prepare, make sure we check everything. We go through and make sure that when we have our presentation, everything is in order to start.
Absolutely, you got it. Anyone ever heard of the WebEx tax? Of course, that's that time that we pay at the beginning of every meeting, right? So make sure you're there early. And then when we're getting ready to do our presentation or demonstration, we just have to make sure people are seeing what we're seeing. And the modern technologies we have today have made this so much better. But when we started today, James, right, we made sure that the screen was showing effectively, that we could see the mouse and the annotations and the things that we're doing here as we go through. So make sure that they can see your screen, that they can see your mouse as we go through. And then, of course, making sure that they can hear you, right? So we actually did a sound check as well. But too often, if you're not using a microphone or you don't have a headset, there's a lot of challenges. So just some simple basic things here that we're going to talk about, right? Go full screen. We don't want to see your URL. Just telling you. It's okay. Go full screen, maximize the real estate. A lot of times these things are shrunk on small screens and mobile devices. So go right there. Make sure that they're seeing things. Here's a couple important ones though, right? Latency check. With challenges today, we're not all 5G yet. There can be a couple second lag. And so we want to make sure we do a time check or a latency check, pardon me. So here's the recommendation. You get ready to do your demonstration. You're on the phone right away, right up front with maybe the first person who joins, your counterpart who may be on the other end of the phone or screen, or just anyone that you can capture and say, will you help me out real quick? I want to make sure you can see my screen and my mouse effectively, but more importantly, I'm going to do a 3, 2, 1 check. And in 3, 2, 1, I'm going to hit click, and I'd love for you to tell me audibly when you see my screen change so that we can detect and compartmentalize that latency check and know that we may need to click 1 to 2 seconds ahead of ourselves to get to the next section before we go through. Right? I love this one as well. On the modern day work from home is make sure you're checking for your interruptions and your animals. It's okay when everyone has them, and it's a great way to make yourself endearing to your client at times. Acknowledge it when it happens. It's cool. I had a gal the other day, had a cat jump on her lap, and it became part of the audience. We laughed, we built rapport with the client, and it was fun, right? And then make sure they're seeing those things. But more importantly here, I think one of the most important things, make sure you're there ahead of time as we go through. All right, a couple things going on before the demo. We'll jump through these right here. Learn your collaboration tool. I heard Chris say this as well. Monitor your performance, have a second screen if you need it. And I think we could have a virtual happy hour and just tell stories about things that are happening right here. Would you agree? Ooh, there we go.
I so agree.
That's my suggestion for the next one of the upcoming presentations is talking about that. All right. So during the demo, we want to talk about your video, right? So we got some recommendations for you. At the beginning, turn it on. Build some rapport, get your face. Maybe not when you're actually doing the mousing. Turn that video screen off. Go ahead and draw attention to your solution in the presentation. Turn it back on for summaries. And of course, anytime that we want to see what's going on with the audience, ask a poll question, see some form of interactive communication and ask them questions. How's that sound, James?
It makes sense to me. It's important, right? We talked about some of the things like nonverbal cues and understanding. Like this helps humanize our presentations.
Absolutely. All right, there's going to be some things during the demo that you need to do. But what I want to jump to now is actually thinking about things that we want to do from a checklist. I've got 3 or 4 other checklists, and I'll make sure those are available as well as we follow through. So we've talked about setting things up, where the challenges are. People aren't listening, they're not retaining, they're highly distracted, and we know there's some checklists that we need to do to help increase that. But I think one of the important takeaways from this session is going to be right here. So pay attention to this if you guys will. We want to talk about ways to increase retention, which ultimately drives what customers can remember that's valuable about your solution and to them, right? Think about this. If you want to increase repetition, you repeat things. You can go over things numerous times, right? And I think we all know that from studying our college exams. But number 2 is memory representation and meaningful associations to what's already known. So with that in mind, James, yes or no, And in your chat dialog box, give me a yes or no. Think you might want to brand your solution to meet that of the customer's current environment or situation?
Probably a good idea. Answer is yes. We're getting plenty of yeses in the
Yeah?
chat. Yep.
Very, very good. How about this? Stories of similar customers.
I
Folks
think
just like you had a challenge, and it might be similar to yours. What do you think?
it's the word similar that is so key in this sentence, in my opinion, right? Like so many times we say customer stories, like similar customer stories. Big difference, relatable.
Absolutely. I agree. We call that a vision generation demonstration when we train, but it's essentially a quick way to engage folks from a storytelling perspective and allow them to jump into discovery really quickly. So we keep those demo segments short and sweet and to the point. Here's one, and you may have seen me do this a couple times in this presentation. I want you guys to remember this one. I'll do it again. Establish importance and criticality. It is absolutely okay to say, hey, folks, I want to draw your attention to something very important right here. I'm going to actually highlight this for you. Establish importance and criticality of your solution. Stop and tell them this is very important. I want you to remember this, and I want you to see this because it's dramatically going to improve or increase the success of your implementation or the way you do business, et cetera, et cetera. Pull it out. So we're going to talk about some other things, but more importantly, think about that. Let me clear that, and I've got one more for you. We call it chucking it up, right? Anyone familiar with that term? Chunking up your demo allows us to create small, consumable, bite-sized components. And this can be a presentation or a demo. Categorize the information that you have in a neat little package. Introduce it with an introduction and perhaps a situation slide. Show a picture, get folks intrigued. Give them a little bit of a taste of what you can do, but not too much, and allow them to ask questions to drive through before you conclude and go to the next segment of your solution. Perfect for a role change. It might be perfect for specific features that different audience members needed when they go through, but we call it chunking up your demo. And I want to give you a quick illustration of that. Here it is, but it's essentially an ability to set things up. So one of the things that we suggest in the great demo training, right, is to take these particular items right here, if I will, and do a small chunk to your demo. Start here with your introduction. Go to the depth and level of interest that your clients need before coming back out with a conclusion, a deep breath, a round of questions before we start over, allowing us to do what would typically be on a retention curve, 1 or 2 retention points, many different retention points. And through the repetition of introduction, demo, and conclusion, we're able to repeat the value that our solution provides to them numerous times, as opposed to just once in the beginning, increasing engagement, helping maximize, right, the retention of your benefits of the particular solution. It's a very important component here of the training. We're winding things up here, and we're coming near the ends. One of the things that I wanted to talk about that's very important as well, folks. Read it with me if you will. I don't even need to say it. You're looking at the screen. Do these things not once, not twice, but thrice. I'm going to say it. Summarize. So, folks, let me do that for you now, right? So we've talked about some things in this last segment. Use your checklist. We're going to provide some items to you, just like you're a pilot. Make sure that you've got your checklist, that you're there early, that people can see your screen, that you're going through, that you're using your mousing tools, that you're using some of your pointers, and you're doing things on the screen, right, to point out things as we go through. And James, I was going to have you point at some things today and move them around, but from a time perspective, we weren't there. But by getting interaction and using those things, you can certainly maximize and increase retention. And of course, by summarizing, it's very important that we do that so they understand the value. Yep. But I'll leave you with one thing, one last thing. And I would say, if there's only one thing that you remember from our conversation today, when your retention is low, I hope you will remember this. Right here, just like Ray Charles, folks, be engaging and get interactive. Being interactive is the name of the game. Ask those questions. Make sure you got an agenda prepared, you're summarizing, showing the specific capabilities your client needs, but doing so in a conversational approach as opposed to a fire hose of furiously fun features. So with that, James, I'd love to answer any questions. I know you probably have a few slides as well, but wanted to thank you for allowing me to share some of these insights with you and the folks on the call today.
No, I really appreciate the time today. This has been super valuable for me. I've really enjoyed it. We got a lot of good feedback. What I'm going to do is I'm going to launch the poll right now to give us some feedback on how we did today. And then maybe let's actually talk about the next slide for questions is what, thanks, Paul, right? Awesome job. And I actually have a couple of questions that I want to ask you, but I'm going to ask them on the discussion boards. We've done this after every webinar so far, where we've posted this topic and had people interact and ask questions. So for those that are on today, please do that. Please ask that. I have 3 questions for you that I've been saving. I'm going to put them on there right after this webinar, Paul. Hopefully you can answer them. Hopefully everyone else who's here today can too. And then before everybody goes, we just have a couple of slides just want to walk you through real quick. Again, we've talked about the webinar schedule and what's coming out. We are really focused on high quality webinars. And so on the next slide, you can actually see what's coming up next. We have diversity and inclusion and driving better business results, and then a woman in solution excellence panel. These are our next 2 panels. We have some really well-known key individuals from the community joining us from all over the world. And I know this might sound a silly comment, but all of these webinars are for SEs, SE leaders, AEs, and anyone in your network. These are very important topics, especially over the next 2 weeks that we need to bring awareness to. So please join, invite some of your peers. We'd love to have you. And then in May, we have a focus on SEs and SE growth in individuals. So Paul, on the next slide, you can see that we have integrating a holistic approach toward becoming a best-in-class sales engineer. And then we have product expertise is temporary, value is forever. We've stressed value on all these webinars. That's what we're pushing. And on our last 2 slides, so one is the newsletter. So great job to Hannah, who's been leading the efforts here. We launched Beyond the Demo. That is the name of our newsletter, bi-weekly, highlighting blogs, webinars, individuals from the community. Please check that out. Please share it with your colleagues and friends. We know you're getting inundated with newsletters right now, so we want to make sure it's minimal and impactful. That's the key. And then the last slide is social awareness. We've talked about supporting the community, the growth of this community. We've really focused on LinkedIn over the past month. And so please check out the PreSales Collective and follow the page. We've been trying to hashtag PreSales Collective. So if you post something that's related to our field, please hashtag it. We'll grow out that hashtag and then share with your peers. This is Carl Lewis down in APAC, solutions architect that you're going to see on a panel next week, posted about the community to all of his peers. We had a number of people message and reach out. This is how we support our community. This is how we support practitioners. And this is how we continue to get pre-sales a seat at the table moving forward. So with that, thank you everyone. Appreciate your time. Paul, great time. Thank you so much for the content. Really appreciate it. We'll post the recording on the website, the discussion boards, and we hope to see you all next week. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, great one. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.